Oh my God, I love the new intro. That's puppy.
Yeah, I'll have to see how it looks when we actually.
Well, now you're saying that, and we have to start over.
No, we don't. We'll just leave this in. It's funny.
Okay. Well, ladies and gentlemen don't watch this.
They're not watching.
They're not watching. If they were, they're not listening anyway. Oh no, maybe we have to do fights.
Maybe we do.
So, welcome to All Apple Pie and Stuff. I am Jennifer. This is my daughter Lauren. We have peppy new music and peppy new outlook on the show, maybe. I don't know. No, so we were going to do hobbies, like, doing stuff separately from your children and your husband and stuff like just stuff for you. But then I made a mean comments about men, so maybe we do fighting,
I think
marital fighting.
perhaps we do marital fighting.
And I apologize if I look all over the place, because if I look at the camera, I look like I'm looking at you, but if I look at my daughter, I don't know, look like I'm on drugs or something. I'm not.
We're all just wandering.
Wandering all over. So fighting. Well, how do you and Andy handle that?
Um, I think it's well, I mean, when it comes to fighting, we're pretty like private about it. Like we don't fight in front of the kids, we don't fight in front of guests. I just won't even entertain the conversation. So, there's that.
Yeah, I think it's a bad idea to fight publicly. For one thing, it makes everybody around you very uncomfortable. I've known people that will start bickering and fighting when my husband and I are there, and
It's awkward.
it's really awkward. You don't know what to do. Like, you just want to get out of there.
Well, and like beyond fighting, when you're like at somebody's house and they're like barking orders at their spouse.
Oh,
Super awkward. I know that was why one of Andy's friends, we never wanted to go over there. Because his friend's wife would just like yell at him to do stuff. And I'm like, they're like hanging out right now. This can wait. But yeah, awkward.
very awkward. And then we had friends when Lauren was a baby. Their son is 8 days younger than us, and they're not married anymore, but they were a married couple at the time. And now you'll see why not. But she was losing her mind at him because he packed the diaper bag. They were coming to our house. Now, mind you, we have a baby roughly the same age as their baby. And she was so angry at him because he forgot to pack butt wipes in the diaper bag. And it devolved into how he never does anything that he's supposed to do, and he never thinks about this, and he doesn't think about that. So that was a bit of an overreaction. Like, I get being upset that he forgot the butt wipes because, the baby's butt does indeed need to be wiped. However, we did not live in a rural area. There was a store right there. But beyond that, I had a baby. I had butt wipes. I even told her that. Like, I mean, it's okay. I have butt wipes. Well, if he would have put the butt wipes in here, and da, da, da. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm just really trying to diffuse the situation because we all feel real awkward right now.
Right?
And it wasn't the biggest crime on earth, to forget to put something in the diaper bag because, ladies, your husband's probably going to forget to put stuff that you would remember. But can you find your keys? Because I don't know about you, but I can't find my keys without my husband.
Or where
It
you
is
parked your
like
car.
where I parked. I don't know where I parked. I don't know where my keys are. I have no idea where I'm going. So if not for my husband, I would never be able to drive because I wouldn't be able to find my keys. And if for some miracle I did find my keys and went somewhere, I wouldn't know where the heck I was. I couldn't find my car to get back in it, and I don't know where I am. And we all have Google now, but before Google, I had Brian. And I would call him frequently, honey, I don't know where I am. I don't know. And he'd be like, what mile marker? I'm like, what is a mile marker? And, and then he would, what direction are you going? How would I know? He's like, there's a compass on the car. It tells you what direction you're going. I'm like, oh, seriously? I didn't even know that. So my husband has never belittled me because I am an absolute dingus when it comes to directions, finding my car keys, finding my car. So, anything that would be my area of expertise that he may have forgotten, I should show him the same grace. I feel that's only fair.
Well, and so I asked this in my like mom group chat the other day. It was like, how many of you, like your spouses, know your kid's diaper size and what brand? And I was kind of surprised how many of them actually knew.
Dad knew.
But like, no, Andy has no idea.
No idea.
But I think he knows that it's Pampers. He knows that Henry gets the cruisers and Ava gets the swaddlers, but he has no idea what the sizes are. And I can't even really blame him on that, because like they go up a size. It's not like I'm like, oh hey honey, I bumped him up a size. Like, so like, I don't know. I feel like when it comes to arguments over like little shit like that, I don't feel like it matters that much.
It doesn't. And again, I mean, you can make a joke about it, laugh about it, whatever, but it's not worth. So remember this, and this goes for any relationship, it goes for your kids, it just goes for life in general, but particularly with the man that you have decided to spend your life with. First off, remember it's a partnership. You guys are not mortal enemies. It doesn't, do you want to be right or do you want to be happy? I remember somebody telling me that at the beginning of my marriage, because I want to be right a lot.
Yeah.
I really do not like to be wrong, and I will die on that hill, whatever that hill is that day. But in the beginning of my marriage, we had friction, because we'll talk about that too, like fighting. I know a lot of people think having a baby is going to save a marriage. It won't. Having a baby is a very stressful thing. Never have my husband and I had more arguments than when we had a baby in the house, because we were tired. We were spent. We didn't know what the hell we were doing, like as a couple with, adding a baby into, we already had a child because I had a child from a previous relationship. So there's a lot going on, and it's very chaotic, and it's very hard to get your bearings. So if you don't have a strong foundation to begin with, that's going to really crumble when you have a baby. So you want to make sure you've got a solid thing going on with you and your partner, not your enemy, before you bring a baby into that, because the baby's going to upset that apple cart for a little while. It will eventually bring you closer, yes. Having our children has brought me and my husband very close, and it gives us, like, when we're having bad days, which we have a very good marriage, but we have had some rough times, as everybody will, and that is that is what brings us together. We share children, we share grandchildren, and that's worth fighting for. But in the beginning, when you've got a new baby and nobody's had any sleep, that's not going to save a marriage. So don't do that.
Yeah.
But just remember, and somebody had told me during that period of time, because the things were rough. It was rough in our marriage. It was just rough in general. And somebody had said, "Do you want to be right or do you want to be happy?" And actually, I have to give a shout out to my brother. It was my brother that said that to me, and I was like, I mean, I kind of want to be right. He's like, "Well, do you want to be right and alone?"
Right.
No, I don't. So it's not important to be right. It's important to come together as a team and try to settle things in an emotionally mature way, which is not. And please don't think that I am putting myself up there as the example of emotional maturity,
Right.
because I got mad at my husband for the way he cut sausage.
Oh my god, the sausage.
And it was completely ridiculous and irrational. The trick is to not both be completely ridiculous and irrational at the same time. So if your husband's being ridiculous and irrational, now might be the time that you need to be the emotionally mature person who's not going to feed into the nonsense. So that's a tip. You don't have to be right. You want to be happy. So solving it's more important than, like, pick your battles. Sometimes you can be like, okay, whatever.
Well, and I was trying to find the statistics on it, because I know we had kind of mentioned it, but I can't just in my quick Google search attempt here. But like a lot of people in that like first year after they have a baby end up either getting divorced or they experience a lot less satisfaction in the relationship. And I know, especially with a first baby, it was saying, or at least a first baby of that relationship. So, like in yours and dad's case, you already had a child,
Right. And
but
then that's added stress though if you are coming into a relationship with a child because the other parent and my husband is both of my daughter's parent. He adopted my older daughter as well. So he is her father. But trying to find your role with that child that you're not the biological parent, I would imagine is rough. I didn't experience that, but my husband did.
yeah. And I know like one of the biggest fights Andy and I had was shortly after Henry was born. And I was just telling you about this the other day because I don't think I had even told you about said fight, but it was a big one. Um, and he had family out visiting, and I will admit I was being a total bitch. Um, it is what it is. Like, Henry was still not sleeping good. I was pumping. I was just really miserable. I was not well for about 6 months after Henry was born. Um, so there was all of that stress, and then people being over, and that just adds to everything. And I don't know, I like freaked out because he was driving like a lunatic or something, and I got pissed. And he said something to me, like he snapped at me and yelled, and I lost my shit. And we were going to breakfast, and his grandparents were driving separately. And so, like, I'm pissed. I'm not talking to him the whole car ride there. And we get to breakfast, and I'm just, gonna put on a happy face. It's not their problem. Like, we're gonna deal with this argument later. Um, but I think in his mind, he thought, oh, well, we had a good time at breakfast, so like, it's fine now. All's forgiven. So we got back in the car, and he tried to talk to me. I'm like, you don't need to talk to me. And we ended up having a very long conversation about it, but it wasn't until like several hours later that we actually talked about it. And that can go one of two ways too, I think. Like, you can either sit and stew and get angrier and angrier when you take time apart from having that conversation. So maybe it is sometimes better to have the conversation immediately. But I think in that situation it was good because it kind of gave me a little bit of time to be less heated about what had happened.
And the other thing I want to mention about fighting, and this isn't just fighting. This is just what comes out of your mouth. You cannot take words back.
Mm-hmm.
Once they've come out of your mouth, they are out there in the ether, okay? So, words have power, and even if you didn't mean it, but you did mean it because it crossed your mind and it came out your mouth.
Mm-hmm.
You might think about it later and be like, well, that was an exaggeration or whatever, but you still thought it in the moment and you said it. That goes for, and this ties into parenting too, because you got to watch what you say to your children too.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want you to beat yourself up because as a mom, you are going to say something at least once that you're like, oh my gosh, like I should not have said that. Your kid is probably going to be okay. But remember, take that breath that you need to think about what's coming out of your mouth and how you're saying it, because tone matters too. And kids particularly, but also your spouse, they take that to heart and it's there forever. And you can't ever take it back. You can make up for it, you can not do it again, you can do all of these things, but that damage happens in a split second because you were so frustrated. And again, people talk about children regulating emotions. Adults need to do that too, and we're not always the best at it. And I will admit, my generation is probably the worst at it.
Sorry, you were talking tone matters too, and I was just thinking about I'm laughing on the inside.
Okay, yeah, so you can tell that story. This is a mom fail.
Yeah, so I mean, I was a kid and I talked a lot. I asked a lot of questions, and I don't know, some joke I heard on TV or something, and
She told stupid jokes all the time, all the time.
All the time. I thought they were hysterical. I don't know if I heard it on TV or if it was on a popsicle stick or something. You were making dinner. Like, I can picture the scene in my head. You're making dinner in the trailer on your electric skillet, electric frying pan, and I'm telling you the joke, and I'm like, isn't it funny, Mommy? And you're like, yeah, sure. And I was like, why aren't you laughing? I'm laughing on the inside. It was
that
just...
was one line that, like, has carried through,
And she says that I'm still mad about it. I'm not mad about it. I just really think it's hysterical because, like, I have that, like, picture perfect memory of it. And I mean, I was really little, but I can just hear the tone of voice, the very deadpan, I'm laughing on the inside. So,
Yeah, so don't be like me. Don't say that to your kid. They'll be scarred for life.
like, it's really funny now. As a kid, I was just like, oh,
Yeah, she was upset.
mommy's not amused. um, no, I had.
Which is, I mean, and if you're fighting with your spouse though, and you're trying to hurt them, which a lot of people are, and I get the appeal of doing that in the moment because you're so angry that you want to hurt them. You need to take a step back, and you know how they always say, "Don't go to bed mad." It is okay to go to bed mad.
Yeah.
If you can't be decent and you can't fight fair, and I know that's like a therapy terms, and you know I hate therapy, but they do get some things right. Meaning, just don't ever forget that person is your partner, even if your marriage is ending and you've got kids. That person is going to be in your life, so you don't need to don't put negativity out in the universe if you can help it. Try to speak life and love.
Well, and I think it's important to. There's going to be arguments that come up in marriage, whether they become big fights or, you're tired, you snap at each other, shit happens. I think it's important before you ever get to that point of fighting, what are the boundaries? Because
Yeah.
if you're going to be somebody who you get into that first big fight and you're immediately threatening divorce, like, especially if you don't, like, do not bring up divorce unless you mean it. Because it is not okay to emotionally manipulate your partner by threatening something, whether that's, divorce or relapse or some
Oh
sort of
God, yeah,
self-harm.
that.
Like, don't emotionally manipulate your partner. Those are boundaries you need to have in place before you guys fight. Like, you need to know divorce is not going to be on the table unless you really mean it.
Well, and think about this too. Like you might be able to emotionally blackmail your spouse into doing what you want, but you will never have a deep relationship because one, you have not created an environment where they can be themselves and say what's on their mind and tell you what they need. They're only going to be saying what you want to hear because they don't want to be emotionally blackmailed, and they're walking on eggshells around you. So you're not getting your genuine partner. You're not getting the husband, his whole self. You're getting what he'll put out in front of you. So that's a very shallow relationship. Also, I don't know about you, but for me, I do not want my husband to stay with me because he feels like he has to, because because I've browbeat him into it. I don't want to feel like he's staying because I'm making him stay. I want my husband to stay because he wants to be here and he wants to work with me. And again, I am not perfect. I have done some really stupid things that were harmful in my marriage, to my husband, and vice versa. And when that happens, what do you do? Because it's gonna happen. We're all human, and as much as you want to be like fair fighting, and we're not gonna fight in public, and we're gonna discuss things like adults. As much as you want to be that person, and maybe you're that person most of the time, maybe your husband's that person most of the time, there is going to come a time when that doesn't happen. So then what? What do you think? Have you guys had any of that happen? I mean, you don't have to tell me your personal quick.
Yeah, there's definitely been times, like, I try, because I know Andy brought it up the one time we had that, massive fight after Henry. He brought it up later. He's like, I thought you were going to leave me. And I was like, I mean, if I'm going to leave you, I'm going to tell you I'm going to leave you. And I'm going to be serious. I'm not going to put that out there, otherwise. But I'm like, you need to, like, remove that part from your mindset, because I said till death and I meant it. So...
Right.
And I mean, I've made the joke before, like, you get to choose whether that's a timely death or not, but obviously that's a joke. But
I always tell them that I'm going to stay married till death do us part, so I will just kill you slowly every day. Which, I don't know, some days probably feels like that with me.
But I think, yeah, you can't take back something you've said. If you said something hurtful, like that is going to live in their head forever. That whole like sticks and stones thing is bullshit. Um,
Yeah, it is.
it really is. So you need to be cognizant of what you say, and then I think, you know, the explosion happens, the chaos is over. How do you start picking up the pieces? You know, like I think the very first thing that needs to happen, and I saw this recently, I was talking with someone, and I'm not going to say who, obviously. She had a big blow up fight with her husband, and he said some really nasty stuff to her. And I just told her, because she had a boundary. You will not speak to me like this. This does not feel safe. She took her kid and she left. She's like, we can discuss this when you're calm, but I will not be treated this way. So, good example of boundaries. Like, she's not leaving her husband, but I was talking to her after she had left, and I said, you need to decide now. Well, not now necessarily. I'm like, but you need to decide, are you going to forgive him? If you forgive him for this behavior, like he's apologized, he wants to reconcile and start picking up the pieces, you can't expect perpetual reparations for damages done. You cannot make that man or woman or whoever you're married to, you can't force them into a life of punishment to make up for one transgression.
And if you do that, they will leave you eventually.
Yeah. Like it's
I mean,
not
they will leave eventually because nobody is going to be punished for the rest of their life.
I'm not saying forgive and forget, because you're never going to be able to forget. But I am saying don't outwardly punish your spouse. Like, after a situation like that, you may have to set some new boundaries, some new, lines in the sand. We're not going to go here. We're not going to do this. We're not going to do that. If this happens, here's what we're going to do. Because, you can't just let somebody treat you any kind of way, but.
And you can still talk about it, um, you know, and I'm not going to get into specifics because I don't air my husband and my dirty laundry, but we do the show, and so for the interest of helping people, or if maybe you can get a nugget from my experience, that's fine. So we've had our share of problems. Most of the time we work pretty well together, and usually if there's a serious crisis, my husband is really like he just comes together with me, and he's the person that'll tell me everything's okay. Like when we have a crisis, like when we had the floods and stuff like that. I mean, I was very upset, and my husband was, he was upset too, but it was really dramatic. Like my kid almost drowned, like all this crap,
Yeah, it was bad.
It was a bad scene, and I was like very, just really distraught, depressed, whatever you want. I don't even know. I just didn't even know what to do. We're staying at his cousin's house because we had to flee our home and everything. And he's like, you know what? This is really bad, but as long as I'm with you, we're home. And that's kind of how my husband is, But he's not a perfect man, and we've had problems, and he's done a couple of things, and not many, but there's been a couple of incidents in our marriage where I was really upset, and I was having a very hard time getting over it. Now, the one time was kind of recently, and we had a pretty big blow up about it, and I mean, there was a lot of things. I was very upset. So I didn't say much at first because I didn't want to say something, because in that moment, if I would have hurt him, I would have felt pretty satisfied.
Yeah.
But in the back of my mind, I love my husband and I don't want a divorce, and he is my partner. So that's probably a bad idea. So I had to shut my mouth, and that is really difficult for me to do. Some of the stuff we discussed over text message, because I can delete all the really crappy things I said on text message and just say the meat of what I'm trying to say. So that happened first. But this went on for a good month and a half, maybe. I really was not getting over it. But I didn't want to fight with him. I already said my piece, but I did revisit it several times with him and discuss it more because I needed to. And he was like, are you going to continue to bring up the past? No, I don't want to bring up the past, but I don't feel like we've resolved this. So it wasn't like a you did this and you know what I mean? And I told him that too. And I have given this advice before and I did it. I actually took my advice and I did tell him things that I appreciate from him. So I always will tell people when they're having a problem and they come to me in their marriage, think of 3 things that you appreciate about your husband before you have a conversation with him. For one thing, that gives you something positive to think about so that you're not blowing up whatever happened into something that it might not be, or you're not making it, you know what I mean? You need to remind yourself what you love about this man, and they need to hear some things that they're doing right too. Because how would you feel like if your husband was really mad at you and he came to you and he said, you know what, honey, I think, like, I appreciate that you are a good mother to our children and that you always take care of us and that you're like selfless or whatever your traits are that are your strong qualities. But I'm having a problem with the situation that happened. Would you receive it better?
Well, right, and I think that kind of comes down to one of those like lead by example moments. So maybe every time you do have a disagreement with your spouse, you guys are at each other's throats or, people are going on the defensive. Think about it, if you have a problem and you're coming to it from a place of, hey, this is the problem we are facing, how can we work on it? But
And also, what do you do? So, in the beginning of our marriage, and this was after we had a kid and a lot of stuff was going on, my husband had some resentments built up toward me that I wasn't aware of.
yeah.
Because he wasn't communicating with me at all, which I think is typical of men, particularly young men. Like now that we're older, that it's different, but this is, 28 and a half years of working on this, you know. But then, he just felt like he needed to be the man all the time. If he was upset about something, it didn't matter. He just needed to make me happy and take care of the kids. And, so he wasn't communicating with me. So I didn't know. So it like kind of came, it felt like it came out of nowhere. Or it didn't, but I didn't know. And so that was the whole, do you want to be right or happy? Because I was ready to be like, yeah, done with this. Like, I don't care. You can just be gone. But so finally I said, okay, look, you need to tell me what you're upset about. And he did. And it was ugly.
Yeah.
Ugly. He said horrible things to me. And, he had built up so much resentment that he made it worse in his mind than I don't, okay, so after he told me all these things, and some of them were valid, some of them I was like, what? But I didn't say anything. I stayed very stoic. And when he got done, I said, okay, did I hear you correctly? You said da 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 da. And I basically mirrored. And for anybody who's in sales, that's a sales trick, right? Because I was in sales for a long time and I was great at it. So it's called mirroring. So that's not, it's repeating back. Mirroring is actually doing what they do. But anyway, so I repeated back, and he said, yeah, but because after it came out of his mouth and after he heard it from my lips, he was like, well, I guess it's really not like that. And I said, that's okay. I heard what you said, and I heard it correctly, right? Yes. I go, I am going to need some time to process that before I reply. Because some of the stuff he said, I was super pissed about.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, and I took a day, and then I came back to him, and I said, well, on this, blah, 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 blah. You're right. I can do this in the future or that, blah, blah. I'm like, on this one, I just don't agree. On this one, maybe I'm like that, but I'm probably going to stay that way. So you got to decide whether or not you can be with that. And then I have a few beefs of my own, And then we discussed it, and it was kind of the beginning of us learning how to communicate in a way that just wasn't crappy at each other.
Well, and like looking at it, you mentioned like the sales tactic of just the repetition. Like a customer service tactic I've used a lot, both with customers and with my spouse, and it just kind of reframes the way that they're coming at the situation, because initially they might be coming to you and blowing up on you about something that happened, and you want to respond right away, the thank you. It's a quick, thanks for bringing this to my attention. I'm going to think on that. You're not saying, thanks for being a dick, thanks for blowing up at me. It takes a lot of, it diffuses the fire a lot when you can just be like, thanks for letting me know. And it's such a simple, like, quick thing. And it really, like, it deflates so much of that, like, aggression because they feel like, okay, you are listening to me. You are taking into consideration what I'm saying. I don't have to be on the offensive here to get my point across.
Right, and also it's forcing you to listen to what they're saying and then repeating it back is to make sure that you heard it correctly. Is this what you were trying to say to me? Because maybe not. Maybe you got something out of it than what they were trying to say. But you don't need to think about your reply. You can reply later. Let's hear the whole thing. Because when you do that, and I'm not saying, like, that was the only time my husband ever said stuff like that to me, like where it was just really a dump because he had let resentment build up. But it basically, I was listening to him instead of trying to think about how to defend myself because I didn't need to. You know what I mean? Once he got it out, a lot of the stuff that he was upset about, he was like, wow, maybe I blew that out of proportion. He just needed to get it out. Mm-hmm. Just like we do, I mean, because women want to be heard. And a lot of the things that when women come to me about beefs with their husband, I think a lot of times it's because they don't feel like their husband's hearing them. Like they're not hearing them and they're not trying to understand how they feel. Because that's another thing too. Like we want our husbands to feel what we're feeling, like, or at least understand that this made me feel this way. It's like not even what you said. It's like how I feel right now. Mm-hmm. And I feel like you don't care that I feel this way. Like you want your feelings validated. Men want their feelings validated too, and they're not going to ever tell you that they need that. But they do, because they're people.
Yeah, and I think another thing that can be really helpful to do, and I'm not saying have a fight over text, because I think that's dumb. I think you miss a lot of the message. You can't convey tone in writing. But let's say you have something. You've got some resentment or a frustration or something that's a big thing you want to approach with your spouse, and you're having trouble thinking of how to approach the situation without saying something you don't mean. I have found, personally, it's really helpful sometimes to just write it all down. Write down everything you want to say and consider that like a first draft, because the first draft is going to be where you're like, you're a dick because you never do the dishes, or, whatever thing it is. That's your first draft. Then rewrite it with less anger. And then, you can even literally sit there and go, okay, here's what I would like to say. I wrote it down because I wanted to have some time to process it and present it in a way that didn't sound like a crazy person or like I was attacking you. So like I said, I'm not saying fight over text, but sometimes it can help, take some time, write down what you want to say. You can either just say it to them, or if it helps you to read it, that can help too.
And if your partner is being completely unreasonable and just attacking you and stuff like that, just shut it down.
Yeah.
That's what I do. If somebody, and it doesn't matter if it's my husband or my boss, because I've done it to my boss. My boss was coming at me unreasonably. I put my hand up. I said, no.
Right.
He's like, excuse me? I said, no. You come talk to me when you can talk to me like an adult. I'm not doing this. I simply will not be treated that way. I don't, and I said that to him, my boss. I've said it to bosses. I've said it to my children. I don't treat you that way. I don't expect to be treated that way in return. No, thank you. I'm not doing this. And then I will walk away if I have to. Because I'm just not doing it. But just like I said, you can shut it down. If somebody is just, you do not have to sit there and be browbeaten. Like, I want to hear how you feel. You don't get to just attack me. Like, no, we're not doing that. So if it gets too ridiculous, you can just shut it down.
Yeah, and a great piece of advice I've heard, and shout out to Amber for that, because she gives this advice a lot when people are dealing with really difficult, really big things in their marriage, is that a bit of separation, like a time where, you guys are spending apart, is not the end of your marriage. Sometimes you just need
No.
to retreat to separate corners and cool off and come back together to try and fix the problem. So, if it really has gotten to that point, maybe you do need to just, I'm going to go stay with a friend for a couple of days or something and then try to work it out later. So, another good piece of advice there.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. And just remember, like, physical separation does not make you not married. You're still married.
And
So take that time to think and cool off. If you
and
need to do that, if you come up with something that serious.
and I think if you're committed to your marriage and you want to make it work, you can find a way. I've seen people work through some really big issues that, to me, I'm like, God, I wouldn't want to work that out, but they did and they were happy. Um, but I'm sorry, I forgot where I was going with that.
It's okay.
Oh, I was going to say, if you're committed to a marriage, there are going to be times that are great and there are going to be times that are really hard. A lifetime with somebody is a long time. So you have to decide, are you committed to making this work and are you going to work together on the problem? Or is this such a deal breaker that you just want to be done?
And again, all of this advice, neither one of us follow completely all the time either. Mistakes will be made. So give yourself a little grace if you make a mistake.
Yeah.
But just remember that your spouse is not your enemy. It's not about who has more points. Make points together.
Yeah.
Like
Don't
you're a team.
don't keep score. That's
And the single best thing you can do for your children is have a good marriage.
Yeah, and I have seen, so I asked that in the marriage group. This is a little bit of a tangent before we wrap up, but I asked, do you fight in front of your kids? And a lot of people said no. A lot of people said yes, sometimes. So it can be helpful to model like healthy conflict resolution. So, like, arguments over littler things, those might be okay to have in front of your kids if you guys can maintain a, civil discourse over it. And that can be good for your kids to see, to set that good example. But don't have, the big knockdown, drag out fights where you're going to be, slinging mud at each other. Don't let that be the picture your kids are going to see. Because
And
even if you
just
work it
don't
out,
sling mud.
well, yeah, don't sling mud. But even if you work it out and you have a fight like that in front of your kids are going to remember that. And that's very detrimental for them, and it can make them feel really insecure about what's going on in their lives because there's a rift with their parents.
Well, uh, children need security and they need love. They need to feel like they belong. I mean, these are all basic needs that human beings have, and you're getting it solely from your parents when you're little. So when mom and dad are fighting and kids have to hear that, it tears them apart, and they will blame themselves because children are very, very narcissistic. So they're very good at finding a way to make everything about them. So maybe if I'm good, mommy and daddy won't fight. Like, don't do that to your kids. If you have a disagreement about pasta or rice for dinner, that's fine. Dad and I had disagreements in front of you guys, but not like disrespectful, terrible things like that. It was like normal life stuff that comes up, like, I don't agree with that. Well, I do it this way.
And definitely, definitely do not argue over parenting styles in front of your children. Do not undermine each other when they are parenting. You can have because I know Andy brought that up recently. I put Henry in timeout because he was being
You got up.
oh,
Okay, you're back.
okay. He was being a butt during dinner, so I put him in timeout. And Andy was like, after I put him in his room, he's like, I don't really think timeouts during dinner are the best idea. And like, we had a normal discussion over it, but like, he didn't question my parenting style or try to revoke the punishment but he spoke with me about it privately away from our kid, which I think was the right way to handle that.
Well, and then so Paige, has mentioned that before about dad's punishments or whatever, and you just let him do it or whatever. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, if dad grounded you, I didn't unground you because I didn't ground you. But if he said you were grounded for a month and you only ended up grounded for a week, I'm pretty sure that was mommy.
Yeah.
But my kids didn't see that. I'd be like, honey, do you really think an entire month of punishment at this age is the best way to go? And I'm not talking like when my kids we're talking like teen years and stuff like that. And he'd be like, oh, I'd be like, yeah, maybe you might want to rethink that. I never told him to like lift a punishment, but I strongly suggest that maybe he was incorrect. But never in front of the kids.
Yeah.
Because
So,
that's just not, you don't do that. And another thing that parents do, I'm sorry, not necessarily like with the punishment, but like one of the parents tells their kids they can do something, and then the other parent's like, no, you can't do that. Well, that's undermining too. Don't do that.
right. Yeah, I think so. Wrap up, fight fair, don't say something you don't mean, and
Yeah, definitely like we always say, don't speak that into existence. Don't put crappy stuff in the universe. There's enough crap out there.
yeah, I think
Don't do it.
I think that's all for this show.
We got the outro. Is it
Yeah,
new?
it's the new outro. Hold on, let me play it.